What's going on, guys? It's Andrew here, and welcome back to my channel where we talk about Social Security changes, the next two stimulus packages, and daily news updates as well. Congress just passed a bill last night to avoid a government shutdown, which could have been a complete disaster. However, this was just a temporary solution and just funds the government until December, so Democrats are still working on a permanent solution. And all of this is happening as Bernie Sanders is trying to include a $1,000 stimulus check for seniors in the American Family Stimulus Plan. In this video, we're going to discuss what happened last night to avoid a government shutdown and what we expect to happen next when it comes to the physical stimulus plan and the American Family Stimulus Package, which could include a $1,000 stimulus check for seniors. So let's discuss the details in this video, but before we do, don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I also have a second channel, so if you could do me a huge favor, click on the link that's in the description of this video. Go ahead and subscribe to my second channel. I'm going to be giving away a stimulus check on that channel just as a thank you for supporting my work. Okay, so if you follow my channel, you've already heard that Bernie Sanders is trying to include a $1,000 stimulus check in the American Family Stimulus Package. Now, there are some things we know and some things we don't know. First of all, we know that this has a lot of support from top Democrats. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer supports this plan. Nancy Pelosi supports this plan as well. And of course, Bernie Sanders is one of the main Democrats putting together the stimulus package, and this stimulus check was his idea. Now, it's not quite sure if people on SSI and SSDI would qualify as well, but one thing we do know is that generally when something passes for Social Security, it usually includes SSI, SSDI, and VA benefits as well. Now, we do know that anyone on Medicare would get this $1,000 stimulus check, and quite frankly, we're not sure if it would be a stimulus check or a debit card. A lot of people are saying it would be a debit card just because it would be a lot easier to send those out to seniors. Now, the problem is the stimulus package has been delayed because Congress is currently focusing on trying to avoid a government shutdown. Now, what we talked about yesterday in my video is if the government defaulted on its bills, which has never happened, Social Security benefits could be frozen. Now, it's a little bit complicated because technically the Social Security Trust Fund has trillions of dollars. But most of that is not in cash. Most of that is in bonds, which would have to be sold in order to continue to fund benefits. Now, that process is very complicated, and it could take months just to sell those bonds, meaning that, yes, if the government defaulted on its payments, Social Security benefits would probably be frozen. Now, the good news is, for the short term, Democrats have avoided that. Republicans agreed to fund the government until December. This was a bipartisan thing, but it looks like Republicans are going to force Democrats to do it on their own to create a permanent solution. So because of this, Democrats are trying to figure out a way to include the debt ceiling increase in their next stimulus package, which of course is going to delay things even further. On top of that, we still don't know if Democrats like Joe Manchin are going to be okay with a $1,000 stimulus check for seniors. On the one hand, Joe Manchin hates spending money. He hates creating government debt, and he hates creating more spending from the government. But on the other hand, he's actually been on record saying that he wants to expand Social Security benefits and is in strong support of taking care of seniors. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But last night, Congress avoided a shutdown by passing a bill in both the House and the Senate that would fund the government until December. So now Democrats are trying to create a permanent solution for that debt ceiling, as well as pass the physical stimulus plan and the stimulus check package, the American Families Plan. Nancy Pelosi had originally promised conservative Democrats that she would bring the physical infrastructure stimulus plan to a vote this week. That was supposed to happen last night, but Nancy Pelosi had to postpone because liberal Democrats said they were going to vote no. Nancy Pelosi doesn't like bringing things to a vote unless she knows it's going to be approved. So we have liberal Democrats who are risking not getting the physical stimulus plan approved because they want stimulus checks approved at the exact same time. Of course, moderates are digging in, and Joe Manchin officially announced that his price tag that he would like to see for the American Family Stimulus Check Plan is $1.5 trillion in overall spending. Of course, Democrats right now are trying to do 3.5, so that is less than half of what Democrats are currently trying to do. Now, this is the first time that Joe Manchin officially announced how much he wants to spend in that stimulus package, so we'll have to wait and see how liberals respond. If history repeats itself, Democrats will take a few weeks to kind of hammer out the details, and they'll end up compromising at 2 to 2.5 trillion, hopefully including the $1,000 stimulus check for seniors. Now, Pelosi is trying to get liberals to vote and approve the physical stimulus plan now, giving them her word that they will do the stimulus check package afterwards. But Bernie Sanders in the Senate is telling progressives in the House that if they approve the physical stimulus plan, the Senate will tank stimulus checks if the physical infrastructure plan passes first. Bernie Sanders thinks that moderates will not have any incentive to approve stimulus checks if they already got what they want. And what they want is physical stimulus. They're not worried about stimulus checks. So the big news is Congress approved a bill last night to avoid a government shutdown until December, so Social Security benefit payments will continue to be paid. Besides that, the physical stimulus plan and the American Family Stimulus Plan continue to be negotiated as usual. But the big news we have there is that Joe Manchin officially announced a $1.5 trillion price tag that he wants for that stimulus check package. Now we're waiting to see how Pelosi and liberal Democrats respond. This clip from Brian Williams does a really good job of summarizing everything that just happened and what we expect to happen next. So let's take a look, see exactly what they had to say, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
Well, good evening once again. Day 254 of the Biden administration. And while one crisis was averted tonight when the president signed that bill to keep the government from crashing at midnight Eastern time, we are indeed witnessing the midst of another crisis for the Democrats. And it should be noted, a crisis entirely of their own making. And it has to do with infrastructure. What became a running joke during the Trump presidency has become a huge running drama for the Biden presidency. We learned not long ago that there will be no vote in the House tonight on the president's bipartisan infrastructure bill. The House was working until late tonight trying to work out a deal that would allow the bill to come to the floor. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi had vowed that tonight's vote would go on, but she famously refuses to bring a bill to the floor unless she is fairly certain it's going to pass. She spent the day and a large part of tonight trying to get liberal Democrats to support it, but they refused to do so until the Senate passed the president's $3.5 trillion social safety net bill. The two Democrats over in the Senate who have put themselves at the center of this current fight, the aforementioned Manchin and Sinema, aforementioned because their names are used on this broadcast every night, feel that the big social spending bill is too big. They've both been criticized for not coming up with a specific counteroffer. Both senators are, again, listed as Democrats. Hard to tell how many friends they have left among Democrats in the caucus. Both could end up playing a huge role in hobbling their own president. One development today came when Politico reported on a written document from July 28 in which Manchin outlines his proposals for that giant spending bill. The senator floated a maximum spending amount of $1.5 trillion. By the way, $2 trillion less than what the president wants. That document was signed by both Manchin and the Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer. This afternoon, Manchin explained his position.
I brought the 1.5, as you've seen, I think, by now. The 1.5 was always done from my heart, basically what we could do and not jeopardize our economy. I've never been a liberal in any way, shape, or the form. I have voted pretty consistently all my whole life. I don't fault any of them who believe that they're much more progressive and much more liberal. God bless them. And all they need to do is we have to elect more, I guess, for them to get theirs, elect more liberals.
Meanwhile, some House Democrats, speaking of liberals, say that Manchin's spending limit of $1.5 trillion was a surprise to them.
I don't think anybody in the House leadership on down probably knew about this number until this, very recently.
Now, there is also the stalemate between Democrats and Republicans, the traditional kind, over raising the cap on how much our country can borrow. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has told lawmakers they have until October 18 to act. At that point, our country will be unable to pay its bills. No other way to put it. Today, though, Yellen told House members it was time to abolish this notion of a debt limit entirely because it has become destructive, in her view. We have a lot to talk about tonight. With that, let's bring in our starting line on this busy Thursday evening. First, and from the home team, Shannon Pettypiece, veteran journalist, our senior White House reporter over at NBC News Digital. We are reunited as well tonight with two of our friends from the Post, Ashley Parker, Pulitzer Prize-winning White House bureau chief for the Washington Post, and Robert COSTA, national political reporter. His latest book, co-authored with his friend and colleague Bob Woodward, called Peril, is now, of course, a New York Times bestseller. And Robert, I'd like to begin with you. You're in touch with folks at the Capitol. What's the reaction going to be with the way Pelosi played this tonight?
There's concern in Democratic ranks that this thing's on the rocks, but Speaker Pelosi, as you said, only brings a bill to the floor if she's confident in the votes. And she's trying to play on different fronts here to make sure that Schumer doesn't feel like he's in a corner. She's working closely with the White House. Brian Deese and others and Susan Rice are over there at her office talking through this evening to try to come up with a deal. And they know that Senator Manchin felt burned earlier in the year. In our book shows this about the rescue plan. Mitch McConnell and other Republicans feel Manchin may have been asked to do too much earlier in the year, and maybe he's going to sit on the sidelines for a while. So Democrats are dealing with that dynamic. But Speaker Pelosi is trying to balance the reality of the vote with the concerns of her progressives. She's close to the progressives. She doesn't want to get too far from them.
Shannon, the lights were on in the West Wing, including the Oval Office, until just a short time ago when the press corps was sent home. I guess there was a chance that the president was going to go down to the Hill if his presence was called for. No more of that. We're told he's returned to the residence. What's going to be said about how the White House has been playing this?
Yeah, well, I mean, my colleague Kelly O'Donnell, who was working the late shift there, said it was at least until 9 p.m. that the president was in the West Wing, and White House staffers appeared like they were ready for a late night and continuing to work on until there was a vote. We just got a statement a little while ago from Press Secretary Jen Psaki saying, essentially thanking Democrats for trying to work out some sort of deal, saying that they're just going to need more time. They're going to continue that work starting tomorrow morning. And then emphasizing, as they have increasingly been doing so, that while Democrats have some differences, they agree on a lot and on the broader themes and goals that the president is working for here. So a hint of what the messaging is going to be like coming from the White House. I mean, we do know the president was behind closed doors most of the day. He was making phone calls to leadership, to other members of Congress. Staff were coming in and out of the Oval Office, bringing him updates, and that a lot of his focus the past few days have been on those two senators you mentioned and have mentioned many times, and trying to get them to reach some sort of agreement, because without that, there really wouldn't be any way to move those House progressives forward, and the White House certainly acknowledged that.
So, Ashley Parker, Congresswoman Jayapal, Democrat, Washington State, who heads the Progressive Caucus in the House, sent out a tweet tonight speaking through social media, though more directly than most people address the House Speaker. Stick to the plan, pass both bills together. Ashley, talk about how much of a sea change this is, with the liberals palpably splitting off, knowing that by doing so, a couple more of these votes go down or aren't held, you have hobbled the president's agenda.
Well, yeah, what you're seeing here are the House progressives really coming into their own and flexing their muscle. They have always been a strong voice, but now they have their own internal whip operation. They're a big group. Representative Jayapal has shown that she can hold that group together. And keep in mind, Leader Pelosi can only lose 3 votes. And their message, there's a lot of frustration when Manchin's number of 1.5 trillion came out, because you have to keep in mind, it's not just less than half of the current reconciliation proposal, but that for the progressives started at 6 trillion. So it's really 1/6 of what they wanted, which is simply unacceptable to them. And their argument, which they have also stated quite clearly, is this is why Democrats were elected. This is why we won the White House, the Senate, and the House, because of this Build Back Better agenda, not to do incremental things, but to do big, bold, progressive things. And that is the bet that they are staking out tonight, at least.
Robert Costa, the reporting is right there in your new book about Joe Manchin. It goes back to the COVID relief bill, about what he was like then, the kind of phone calls, FaceTime with the president. His critics call it hand-holding that he required before he signed on. Probably instructive for all those trying to figure out what's going on now.
They used to call it the treatment with LBJ, the pressure from a president to a senator or a member of Congress to come along. And when you read Peril, we detail vividly how President Biden at times uses curses. He uses pressure to try to get Manchin to come along. And what's so interesting about this in the book, but in this unfolding story right now in Capitol Hill, is President Biden, the so-called centrist from Delaware, has been in lockstep, working closely with progressives during his presidency, an ally of Senator Bernie Sanders, of Congresswoman Jayapal, and others. And you see the real tension with the White House and Congress is not necessarily with the progressives, even though that's the fight tonight. It's with Senator Manchin and at times Senator Sinema. Biden is not the Biden of 2011 cutting deals with Mitch McConnell. And this is a real test for his whole presidency because he's wanted to work so closely with the left wing. And now he's really had a crossroads. Can this continue, what he started with the rescue plan?